need to give everyone one of each.
Okay.
Yeah.
Half, got two, one of each. Because it's, okay. Well, I can.
Shabbat shalom. Well, it always works out. Not good. She's sick. Yeah. She's got like a throat infection or something. So it's not a good thing for a canner.
Sounds like my rabbi. It sounds like my bar mitzvah. I was out hiking camping, and I got a hemorrhage, pneumonia.
Hey.
And it was 2 days.
Yeah, it's now or never.
Now or never. So she's
Unfortunately, no. But, put her on steroids. Hopefully, a couple of days she'll be fine. Okay, good Shabbos. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. All right, first Shabbos of the year. Here we go.
with wine from last year.
I don't know, from many years ago. we're dealing with a Torah portion today called Ha'azinu, which is a boring poem. And in the hands of someone else, this could be really boring. But I think it's not going to be. However, today I really just want to focus on one or two words of the whole portion. And if we can look at one or two words, maybe we can learn something pretty amazing. So we'll see how we do. But oftentimes, these poems that are in the Tanakh are really rich. And every verse, kind of like Proverbs, every verse is like a whole idea. And if you don't really just read it one by one and try to take in what that idea is, you generally miss the whole thing, and it's not, you don't get much out of it. And so if you just sit and read through Ha'azinu, you miss so many great concepts that you need from one to the next to understand what's going on here. And so we generally read it like you would a poem, and you don't really understand it. And so to just sit here and read through it is almost a waste of time. It's not a waste of time, but it's not that productive. But to try to take some of the general concepts that are here and make use of them is really very exciting if you do it the right way. And to do that, you need the benefit of the last 2,000 years of scholarship and Jewish history to try to make sense out of what's going on. And there's some really incredible ideas here. So we're going to begin the very beginning of the portion, Ha'azinu, Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 1. Norman, okay?
Getting well.
Okay, all right. Keep them in our prayers. Okay, everyone have Genesis. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 1, beginning of the portion of Ha'azinu. Here we go.
Give ear, O heavens, let me speak. Let the earth hear the words I utter. May my discourse come down as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, like showers on young growth, like droplets on the grass. Give the name of Adonai I proclaim, give glory to our God. The rock, whose deeds are perfect, yea, all God's ways are just, a faithful God, never false, true and upright indeed. Unworthy children, their crooked, perverse generation, their baseness has played God false. Do you thus require Adonai, O dull and witless people? Do you thus requite Adonai, O dull and witless people? Is not this the Father who created you, fashioned you, and made you endure? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of ages past. Ask your parent, who will inform you, your elders, who will tell you, when the Most High gave nations their homes and set the divisions of humanity. God fixed the boundaries of people in relation to Israel's numbers.
Okay, that I was thinking about that all week. God gave us, a land, commensurate with our numbers. There was an article that came out of the Jerusalem Post this week that they estimated that the Jewish people, we grew by 100,000 people this past year, and we now stand at 15.8 million. I don't know how you can be sure about that number. I mean, there's certain countries, if you ask how many Jews were in the Ukraine, at least before the war, and estimates are between 50,000 and 300,000. What? So I don't know exactly how they know that there's 50, but that's what they said, that went up 50, of people, I guess the ones they know about, that there are 15.8 million. But, if God gave us the United States, if he gave the Jews to the United States, there'd be like 12 of us in each state. How would you know who to put where? And there'd be so few of us. But Israel is the perfect size. The land of Israel is the perfect size for how many Jews there are at any given time throughout history in the world. It's amazing. And so that's what Moses makes an interesting point here. And not only that, you have it all. So, if you like the cold weather, there's somewhere you could live. If you like the warm weather, there's somewhere you could live. It's not like here, where you have to fly to get to, your second and third homes. You have to, right there, you could just drive to wherever it is. Okay, now, who's speaking here? Moses. This is Moses' prayer. Now, if you said God, you're right. Sorry, it's hard to, I'm losing my voice. I don't want to scream. It's a poem that's in the Torah. And if Moses is just singing a song or writing a poem, he can't just say, here's what I think. This has to be dictated from God. I mean, he wrote the Torah. I mean, if you believe in that kind of thing. But the idea is that it was written these are the words of God through Moses. Now, one of the things that we say is, the last parts of the Torah after Moses dies wasn't written by Moses, because Moses would never say something like he was the greatest prophet that ever lived. There never was another prophet like Moses. So it's generally understood that, and he probably wouldn't have written, and Moses died there. Right? That's words in the Torah. And Moses died there. He's like, Right. So the general understanding is the last few verses were written by Joshua. Okay, fine. He's also a prophet. So if Moses wouldn't have written about himself, when God though does have to talk about himself, because God is infinite and he's mentioned here, and God's referred to by different nicknames or different names. So one of the things that we call God is the Rock of Israel. Have you ever heard that? Anyone know how to say that in Hebrew? Right. So Yisrael Kuma. Right? Right. Stick around. Another hour and a half. We'll get to it. You'll probably be halfway home, but some of us will still be here doing it.
Very few.
Yeah, not many. But presumably you'll be here on Yom Kippur, so you may hear it again sometime soon. So we say Tzur Yisrael. One of the nicknames of God is Rock of Israel. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that means. Why? So why do I bring it up? If you look now at verse, very, very famous verse. I think it's verse 4. Verse 4. Now, if you only have the English in front of you, that's fine. But I'm just going to tell you that the verse is Hatzur Tamim Po'alo, which the first three words are pretty famous. The rock, my translation says, the rock perfect in its work. So Hatzur, Ha means the, Tzur means rock. Tamim means like perfect or blameless. It's what we call the Tam, the simple child on the simple son on the four sons of Pesach of the Haggadah, Tam. But Tamim can also mean blameless or pure. Pa'alo, the work that he does, labor. Bank ha-po'alim. Po'alim means the workers' bank, right? Communists. No, it's a joke. But they were kibbutzniks in the beginning. You know what a kibbutz is? A commune. But without the evil empire stuff. Right. Okay. So, I heard someone said, Russia, the Soviet Union was communist and evil. Russia is not communist, just evil. At least they kept that part. Richard? Do you have a microphone? Can you pass it back to Richard, someone? It's coming. It's coming.
Just a quick thought. Sur Yisrael, Rock of Israel, it put Moses' striking of the rock in an entirely different context for me this year.
Wow.
So thank you. Thank you.
Did you read ahead? No. Oh, that's very good. I had 2 cups of coffee. Oh, okay. All right. So now, I would say this. Moses' entire life is about rocks and water. Everything in his life is rocks and water. What are the images you have of Moses and water?
Splitting of the Red Sea.
Splitting of the Red Sea, pretty big one.
The bassinet in the water in the river.
The water saved his life. They put the baby in the water.
Striking the rock.
Striking the rock to get a lot of water and a lot of rocks. Any other water that you can think of?
Well, right here,
Miriam, his sister, splitting the Red Sea, we got that. So there's a lot. The first plague is turning water into blood. There's a lot of water in his life, and that's what causes him to die. Because he hits the rock to get the water instead of speaking to the rock. But, I mean, whether or not that's the reason he dies or not, the image in the Torah is that there's water involved. Now, so you could maybe, if you had to pick the biggest one with Moses, I don't know, maybe it's the water that saves his life at the beginning of his life. Maybe it's the splitting of the Red Sea. Maybe it's the water coming out. What about rocks? What are the images of Moses and rocks? Hitting the rock, standing in when God passes by. Good, we're going to get to that. Richard?
Mount Zion.
Okay, what happened? Mount Sinai.
Yeah, Sinai.
Mount Sinai is a big rock. We're missing the biggest one, though, of the rocks. The 10 Commandments, right? He said take an even, right, to make the Luchot HaBrit, but he had to fashion it. So keep this in mind. Yeah.
the first 2 verses here is all about water. Let the earth hear.
Okay.
May the discourse be as rain, my speech is dew, like showers on young growth, like droplets on the grass. It's all about water.
Now, when Edith was reading the first, 8 or 9 verses, I know what you're thinking. Why'd I even come today? This is boring, right? I mean, who cares? But now you start to take it apart. You say, oh my goodness. He's starting with water, and then all of a sudden, the random name to use for God is Sor. Now, you don't see this in the Torah. There's only 1 or 2 other places in the entire Torah where the word Sor is used to refer to God. And it happens to be here because he said, I'm talking about all this water, but then there was this rock. And by the way, I'm about to go into the land of Israel, but I'm not going. Why? Because of that rock and the water. Right? So he's kind of bitter here. There's something between Moses going on with the rock. Now, Joe, you mentioned the rock. The famous person who gets put in the rock is Isaiah. And God passes. And God was not famous. It's a different sermon. But what happened when God put Moses in the rock?
He put his hand up.
He passed before him. How? What happened? He saw behind him. But what did he say? Because man can't see my face and live. Right? So just keep that in mind. Paul?
Housekeeping note. For some reason, when I go down...
Oh, it's not there yet. Yeah, it's not there. We had a few other things going on this week. And we didn't get to it. L'chaim. I didn't get to prepare this until it's not meant to be there. I didn't get to prepare this till last night, so I didn't have secretarial help to get it on the. So we'll get it on B'diavad. It'll be there. All right. if we were to look, if you have the sheet in front of you, Psalm 114:8. Now, what? Psalm 114:8. The verse is here. It's on the sheet.
The second verse on one of the pages.
Yeah, it's the second source down. I just want to pull it up in Hebrew. So, if you read it in English, it's not that exciting. Does anyone know what it comes from? Why it's familiar to us? Maybe if you heard it in Hebrew, it would sound better. Think about holiday prayers. We say, Ha'ofchi hatzor agamayim, right? Chalamish lemaino mayim, right? It's from Hallel, right? You know, we repeat it. Hallel. So, listen closely. Ha'ofchi hatzor, right? So, he splits rocks in the wilderness and gave them drink as if from the great deep. So God, the point of the verse in the book of Psalms is when King David wrote the Psalms, he's referring here back to the story of how the Jews got water in the wilderness. But what he says is, when referring to the rock, he uses the word sur. Now, why is that weird? If you could skip with me back, this is going to be annoying, but let's see if we can handle it, to the book of Numbers, chapter 20. If anyone has the page, if you could call it out.
Oh,
1152. How about that?
20.
Okay. Judy, do you have it? Would you? Good. 843 if you have stone. He said in store. Stone. That was different level. Yeah. That's ready for the new year. Humor. All right. Judy, could you read chapter 20, verse 1 through 13? Now, we're going back now to the story of the rock in the water.
The Israelites arrived in a body at the wilderness of Zin on the first new moon, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. The community was without water, and they joined against Moses and Aaron. The people quarreled with Moses, saying, "If only we had perished when our brothers perished at the instance of the Lord. Why have you brought the Lord's congregation into this wilderness for us and our beasts to die there? Why did you make us leave Egypt to bring us to this wretched place, a place with no grain or figs or vines or pomegranates? There is not even water to drink."
All right, so we're dealing with water, okay? And we're going to get to rocks.
Moses and Aaron came away from the congregation to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. The presence of the Lord appeared to them, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "You and your brother Aaron take the rod, assemble the community, and before their very eyes order the rock to yield its water. Thus shall you produce water for them from the rock and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts." Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he had commanded him. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, "Listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you out of this rock?" And Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. Out came copious water, and the community and their beasts drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given them."
Okay, so you see here rocks and water. So you've been studying enough Torah now to know that if I keep saying rocks and water, you've got to be thinking they must symbolize something, right? What do they? I mean, I still have 35 minutes, so I'm not going to tell you. But there must be something going on here between the rocks and the water. Roberta, do you have a microphone? Someone pass Roberta a mic. There we go. The mic so they can hear you at home, the people who are listening online.
So if you read this
Yes.
and you, instead of water, you think of Torah, instead of rock, you think of God, then God is saying, talk to the rock and it will bring forth water. Be close to me and you'll always have the Torah with you. We're always going to be there. And so instead, what Moses does is he strikes the rock. It's like kind of talking back to God or being insolent. But instead, God doesn't do what maybe most of us would do and be like, "Ugh, turn our back." God still gives the water. So
Nice.
that is beautiful to me.
Very nice. Very nice. You could turn that into a sermon. Richard?
I forgot. Double entendre. I heard this time again, he struck the rock twice. Once was not enough. And I was taken back to Abraham when the angel said, Abraham, Abraham.
Oh, very nice.
And I get a sense that mine is a forgiving God. And so it's like we get a second chance in life.
You're on the right track. Very nice. Beautiful. I don't want to give it away, but you're on the right track. Yes? Eileen? Yeah, would you mind passing this? Ugh. It's like the Olympics.
Don't drop the baton.
So it says, you and your brother Aaron take the rod. So why do you want me to take the rod? You probably want me to strike the rock. Why did he mention the rod? That threw Moses off, maybe.
Which
Why did he say-
which verse are you looking at?
8.
Okay, hold on.
Why am I going to take the rod if I'm not going to use it?
Oh. We did that class. Remember, we had that class. I don't know, it was a few years ago. And whose rod was it? It was Aaron's. Do you remember why? Who's Aaron? Aaron's rod is Shalom. Aaron's the pursuer of peace. There's a reason why. It's a whole nother class, but it's a really good question. Sherry, do you have the notes on that class? We did that whole take the rod, even though he's not going to use the rod.
Do you have an abbreviated answer? I know you don't have another class.
I mean, it was representing peace, and he was trying. The thing that they had that symbolized peace was Aaron's rod, and so he took Aaron's rod, Aaron's staff, because he was hoping that he was going to be able to bring peace to the camp and get everyone to calm down once they saw that God was going to provide the miracle. But the fact that Moses didn't use it in a peaceful way, but used it in a violent way, that was the problem.
But it's interesting how a rod, like a weapon, is representative of peace.
Well, I mean, it's not really a weapon. It's more of something to help you schlep around.
Well, it could be. All right.
But yet, no, it could be. It's neutral. You know, a lot of things in the world are neutral. For example, a computer's neutral. You could use a computer to study Torah, or you could use a computer to rob your neighbor. It's neutral. And then you have to decide how you're going to use it. A lot of things in the world are neutral. You have to decide, are you going to use it for good or are you going to use it for bad? Nancy, and then after Nancy, I've prepared a few things to discuss. So if we have some time left. Yeah.
So again, we have two different instances where Moses and Aaron are there, and there's a rock, and there will be water. And in one instance, Moses and Aaron are instructed by God to do this, to have this miracle happen for the ungrateful mob of people who just are thirsty and they want it now. They are children, they want it now. And in the second instance, they were told to speak as God speaks to us to show the power of God's words and how that through God's words we will be refreshed, renewed, regenerated, and become closer to God. And in that second instance, Moses was a little petulant, just a tad, and he struck the rock in anger because he was angry with the people. And therefore, Moses did not deserve to join them crossing the River Jordan.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Okay, the whole reason I brought this was to show you a point. Well, first of all, to further illustrate the rock and the water, but I think we're clear on that now. Nobody needs more evidence, I think, that rocks and water play a significant role in Moses' life. But what I wanted to point out here was that if you looked at the Hebrew word for rock here, it's not sur, it's selah. So there are multiple words for rocks. What's another word for rock? We see when it takes a big rock up, even. Right? You put an even on a grave. Right? Because it stands for Abba, Ima, Ben, Bat, Neched, Nechda. Right? An even binds the generations together. But here we have the word selah. So my question is this. When whoever was writing the book of Psalms was writing the book of Psalms, and tradition is it was King David, but whoever it was looking back at the Torah and writing, had the Torah in front of him and was writing, what was going on. And in Psalm 114, when they start talking about rocks, they use the word sur. But when you're talking about the rocks that were split that gave out water, the word was selah. So the author of the book of Psalms changed it to sur for a reason that we're not sure. Right? In other words, if I'm writing a story in Hebrew about Moses and the rock in what we just read in Numbers, why would I use the word sur in Hebrew and not selah, the Hebrew word that's used in that section of Torah? Why would I change it to a synonym, but a different one? It's weird. So there must be a reason. I'm not sure what the reason is yet, but there must be a reason. Okay. Now, there's another example there. You see, if we could look at some other verses. I brought a verse in Deuteronomy, chapter 8, verse 15. Who you led through the great and terrible wilderness with its seraph, serpents, and scorpions, a parched land with no water in it, who brought forth water for you from the flinty rock. So there you have, I believe, this is the problem with English, is it's a different language than the one we're trying to learn from. But if you look at Deuteronomy 8:15, you don't have to, I'll just tell you, unless you don't believe me. But the word for rock in Deuteronomy is sur. So now you could say, not only does the book of Psalms later on use a different word, I mean, maybe you could say it was a different time and that was a more common word back then. I mean, the way my kids speak, I don't understand a word that they're saying. They have a whole new language. And it's frankly annoying, but because you have no idea what they're talking about. But now, even in the Torah, whereas we were referring to the rock that Moses split in the book of Numbers as a selah, by the time you get to Deuteronomy, now it's a tzur. And not only that, we now find, as we get towards the very end of the Torah in Ha'azinu, that God too is referred to a rock. And we always say rock of Israel, but we don't know why. So, you may have heard that before, rock of Israel, and you think, well, he's my rock. That's like an expression. I can count on him.
Rock of Ages.
But is that really what it means? He's my rock. I'm not sure where that comes from. It probably has an etymology somewhere, but it's probably not biblical because or if it is, it's mistaken. Although maybe it came from a different biblical tradition that's not Jewish. Now, when Moses, so I want to switch tacks for a minute and take us in a different way, and then come back and show you how it all comes together. Hopefully you'll think that's cool. So when Moses is before he dies, and he wants to see God. And God tells him, no, you can't see my face. Moses says, I want to know you. Right? And God says, no, you can't see my face, but you can see my back. So most of the things that Moses asked for in his life, he got from God. If he asked God for something, it happened. Except for this one time. Now, you could say, you can't see my face, if you see my face. God could have made an exception. By the way, he's going to die anyway. That's a good thing to die from. What'd you die from? I saw God. Yeah. Cardiac. No, just saw God. So, by the way, that's what he dies from anyway. That is what he dies from. He goes up to the mountain, and it says his vigor was unabated. He was perfectly healthy, and God took him to heaven. That is what he died from. He was also up there for 40 days and 40 nights without any food or water or sleep. He survived that. God can keep Moses alive when he needs to. Why can't he here? I'm not sure. So there are two stories in the Talmud that I wanted to share with you. They both come from the tractate called Brachot, which is one of the most interesting tractates. And the first one is from... yeah. So, that's good, Mark. People are texting me Dwayne Johnson pictures and Rocky Balboa pictures. So, all right. All right. Ken, would you mind reading? Do you have a mic? Anyone have a mic? Here. Richard, could you read? We'll come back to Ken later. Bavli Brachot 7a, the Babylonian Talmud, page 7a, the bottom of the page.
7a, and Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yossi regarding Moses' request that the divine presence rest upon Israel as it once had. Moses requested 3 things from the Holy One, blessed be he, at that time all of which were granted him. He requested that the divine presence rest upon Israel and not leave, and he granted it to him as it is stated, for how can it be known that I have found grace in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in that you go with us, so that we are distinguished, I and your people, from all the people that are on the face of the earth?
Right, so, because God said, I'm not going to go with you, because the golden calf, and, all your sinning, I'm not going to go. Moses said, well, then, this isn't going to work. So we need your presence to be with us. And God says, okay, I will. So the first thing that Moses asked for, he gets. That's one. There's 2 more. Okay?
The request, is it not in you? Is it not in that you go with us? Refers to the resting of the divine presence upon Israel. Moses requested that the divine presence not rest upon the nations of the world, and he granted it to him, as it is stated, so that we are distinguished, I and your people, from all the people on the face of the earth. Now,
this is very interesting. I heard one rabbi suggest that when Moses requests that God doesn't go with the idol worshipers, if you go with the idol worshipers, people are going to think that every religion is valid. But one idea, when the Talmud was written, it was in the era of, especially the early Mishnaic period, was in the era of the early Christians. And, after Augustine, you had this concept of replacement theology, that if the Jews are going to sin, then they lose God's presence and it goes to someone else. And that was one of the early Christian ideas that, a lot of churches didn't reject replacement theology till after the Holocaust, when they said, we might have had something to do with anti-Semitism. Oh, really? You think? But there's this idea that Moses said, the people sinned, and you're staying with us. But they're going to sin again. And if your presence rests with other people, then people in the world will think that replacement theology is a thing. And so some people think that this Talmudic writing was a polemic against the idea of replacement theology, because the early Mishnaic period and the early Christian period was a battle for the hearts and minds of the people to try not to have people leave for Christianity. This was one of the, it may not be true, but it's a theory. Okay, I just thought it was interesting. It's just an aside, but it's interesting. Okay, let's keep going. The second to last line, the Gemara continues.
The Gemara continues to cite the sage's explanation of verses that require clarification on the same topic. With regard to God's statement to Moses, and he said, thank you, "You cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live."
Okay, so normally God could have figured it out. He could have figured a way to keep Moses alive, but there's a reason that he didn't, and it's fascinating. Here's the reason.
It was taught in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korha that the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Moses as follows: "When I wanted to show you my glory at the burning bush, you did not want to see it, as it is stated, and Moses concealed his face, fearing to gaze upon God. But now that you want to see my glory, as you said, show me your glory, I do not want to show it to you."
Right, you had your chance. You had your chance, you weren't interested.
Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korah interprets Moses' initial refusal to look upon God's glory negatively, as he rebuffed God's desire to be close to him. The Gemara continues to cite the sages' explanation of the verses that require clarification on the same topic. With regards to God's statement to Moses, and he said, "You cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live," it was taught in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korah that the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Moses as follows: "When I wanted to show you my glory at the burning bush, you did not want to see it, as it is stated, and Moses concealed his face, fearing to gaze upon God. But now that you want to see my glory, as you said..."
I think it may have, yeah, sorry, we read that part. It copied twice somehow. If you could just skip to the next paragraph. What did Moses see?
What did Moses see? It is said, "And I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face you will not see." Rav Hana bar Bizna said, in the name of Rabbi Shimon Chasida, the expression, "and you will see my back," should be understood as follows. This teaches that the Holy One, blessed be he, who, as mentioned above, wears phylacteries, showed him the knot of the phylacteries of his head, which is worn on the back of the head.
Okay, now I've always wondered what that means. So it's very famous. How many of you have heard that before? The idea of he saw God's tefillin. Have you heard that before? Okay, so it's a Rashi point. It's famous because Rashi quotes it in his commentary on the Torah. But the idea is that God put Moses in the rock face first, and then he passed by. Moses wasn't allowed to turn around and see. But when then God was walking, Moses was able to turn and see his back, and what he saw was the back knot of God's tefillin. Right, so you say God wears tefillin. You know, what is the point of this? And I, frankly, never really understood it until this week. So there's a rabbi named Ari Khan, who I've mentioned to you many, many times, and he sort of put all this together and helped me understand it. But I don't know if he actually saw his tefillin or not. I don't know if God wears tefillin. Maybe he did. Like I've told you before, the video of Moses looking at God as he walked by is grainy, and it's hard to tell exactly what he saw. Right? From the video that we have. I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But what we know is, it probably is meant to teach us something. Right? There's probably a lesson there. It doesn't matter if God wore tefillin or not. Maybe he does. Who knows? It's unlikely. Maimonides would have had a real problem with this. Maimonides, as a Neoplatonic Aristotelian, would have said, we can't do anything that God can do. And since we can wear tefillin, then that means God doesn't wear tefillin. So, okay, fine, whether he wears tefillin or not, it doesn't matter. What does it teach us? But it's an idea. Okay, so Moses gets 2 out of 3. He gets the Shekhinah, God's presence, is resting with the Jews. He gets the Shekhinah, it's not so much with with the non-Jews. You know what the irony is with non-Jews? The Babylonians destroyed the first temple. The Romans destroyed the second temple. But do you know why there's a debate between Hillel and Shammai on how you're supposed to light Hanukkah candles? Right? Whether you go up. So we go with Hillel, which means you ascend in holiness. And Shammai says, no, you descend in holiness. You light 8 the first day, 7 the second day. Fine. So we know from Hillel that you're always supposed to ascend in holiness, and that's what we go by. But why would Shammai think that you should go from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1? Because there was this idea that Hanukkah was based on Sukkot, the same number of days, and for the same reasons. And the idea was that on Sukkot, the Jewish people, they would offer a descending amount of cows every day. And the reason for those cows was, and in total they would offer 70, but they would go down by 1 every single day, was one, it would ultimately equal 70, 1 for each of the nations in the world. And when the temple was destroyed, the sacrifice for the other nations of the world was discontinued. And I saw this one article that makes the point that had the Babylonians and the Romans realized that they were blessed and how much blessings they got because the Jews were offering that sacrifice that actually caused God to protect them, they would have done everything in their power to protect the temple rather than to destroy it. When they destroyed the temple, they destroyed themselves because they no longer had the sacrifice to protect them. And that's why they're not around anymore. And other nations come and go as well without that protection. One more is on its way. Yes?
When I was
Oh, microphone. Chas v'shalom. Right.
I was taught that when God says to Moses, you can see my back, but you can't see my face, that the back was what happened before, and the face would have been the future.
Oh, very nice.
And God would not show Moses what the future was.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. I don't agree with it.
You like it, but you-
And the reason why I don't agree with it is because the rabbis say that at the end of Moses' life, when he shows him the whole land of Israel, he does show him the future. He says, but that's what the rabbis say about that verse. He said to Moses, look, here's where the first temple, here's everything that's going to happen in Israel. There's the first temple being destroyed. Here's the second temple being destroyed. Here's 1948. Here's 1967. Here's the thing with the beepers. And, he saw everything that was going to happen. So, Jay?
So you may have touched on this before, but is it possible that nobody has written this because they didn't know, they weren't there, that actually God relented at the very end and did show him his face, and that's why he died? Because obviously he was not ill and was at 120.
Interesting idea.
We only read what was known.
Yeah.
But at the final end, it seems to me that maybe God finally said, okay.
Very interesting idea. Yeah, very interesting idea. Ian and then Bobby, and then we'll continue with the class.
On the second time that Moses goes up to the top of the mountain after he shattered the tablets,
Yeah.
they describe him when he comes down that he has this expression on his face of awe and warmth or whatever.
The light.
Light. And
The rabbis talk about that.
I could not believe that. And I spoke to other people about this. The concept of God, who created the billions of stars, should come down to this one person on this mountain and present himself, God, to Moses, and Moses comes down with this. I always assumed that that's when he saw God.
Well, so, listen, and there's a midrash in this. I was going to bring it, but I couldn't fit it on 2 sheets. Moses can't see God's face and live. But then after he's up there, nobody can see Moses' face and live. And that's why he wears the veil. In the Torah, it says he had to put a covering on his face. Mechaseh covers his face. And so at first, nobody could see God's face, but then he comes down and nobody can see his face. There's something very interesting going on there. Bobby?
Yeah.
What's that? Nobody could. He wore a mask the rest of his life.
Thank you.
It wasn't even, some people thought it was COVID. It wasn't COVID. It was.
Some might say there was a pragmatic decision made by God. God instructed
Hey.
the Jewish people to cross over to the land of Israel and conquer the other tribes that were there. God appointed Joshua
Yeah.
to lead the people.
Okay.
And there is some belief that if Moses was there, Moses crossed over with Joshua, the people would not follow Joshua. Moses would still be the
That's right.
leader.
That's right. And a lot of people are saying so.
Me for one.
You're right. Yeah. Anybody get that? No? All right. All right. Now let's.
Peaceful passage of power.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's good. All right. So here's let's put it all together now. There's one more verse I need to show you. I think this is the right one, which is Numbers 12:8. I brought it at the bottom there, but I need it in Hebrew. I hope this is the right one, actually. You see it on the bottom of the page. There's one more verse. And after this verse, we're going to put all the pieces together. Hopefully it'll make sense. Might not, but I hope it does. Yeah, okay. So Numbers chapter 12, verse 8 says, when I speak, with him I speak mouth to mouth, plainly and not in riddles, which is a reference to how God speaks to all the other prophets. Moses is the only person who spoke to God in real time. Even Abraham, even Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, they spoke to God through visions and riddles, but dreams, good. But with Moses, it was real time because Moses' intellect was higher than all the other prophets. He was the only one that was able to do it. And so he did. And then it says, and he beholds the likeness of the Lord, which is funny because didn't we say he can't see the likeness of God? But here in this verse, we say, well, he does see the likeness of God. Now, if you looked at that in Hebrew, in verse 8, has anyone ever heard the word in Hebrew, tamunah? What's a tamunah? A picture, right, a tamunah. That's what's used here. Tmunat Hashem, a picture of the Lord. A tamunah is a picture, right? The kids in school, this is one word you know. Like, this is one word you always learn in Hebrew. Draw tmunah, draw a picture. That's the modern Hebrew word for picture. But it's also the biblical Hebrew word for picture. And you have it here in verse 8. It says, Utmunat Hashem yabit, right? And a picture of God he will see. Yabit, he will see. You know that word lahabit, mabit? If you know the song, the famous David Broza song, Yihiyeh Tov, that's how it starts. Ani mabit me'achalon v'zeh oseh li de'atzur. Right, I look out from the window. Mabit, to look. Yabit, he will look. So here's what I'm saying. What does 12:8 say? It doesn't say he'll see God. It says he'll see a picture of God. I mean, a likeness in English, but the Hebrew word tmunah, everyone knows, means picture. So Moses doesn't get to see God, but he does see something that no one else sees, which is a tmunah, a picture of God. Okay, that's still pretty good. It's like, you have a calligraphy, but Chagall really signed it. Right, we have one of those. It's like we have number, 4 million out of 5 million. And it's worth like $9 because he signed it, right? Okay. So one more piece of Talmud, and then I'm going to try and hopefully make this make sense. So if you look at, this is the same tractate, Bavli Brachot 10a, it says this. Rabbi Shimi bar Ukva said to Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, come and see that the attribute of the Holy One, blessed be He, is not like the attribute of flesh and blood, as this verse praises the formation of a man in his mother's womb. So as they're saying is, here's something God can do that no one else can do. The attribute of flesh and blood, in other words, humans, is that we can shape a form on the wall for all to see. So we can draw a picture of something. You can draw a picture of a human being on a wall. But you can't instill it with a spirit and soul, bowels and intestines. You can't make it alive. This is before AI. This is before they knew what we could do now. Now we can do it, right, whatever. But, or before the Terminator and so forth. But they said you could draw a picture, but you can't make it come alive. That's what humans can do. I can draw a picture, but it's not a living thing. It's just a picture. But God, while the Holy One, blessed be, it's not so. God shapes one form within another form, a child in its mother's womb, and He can put inside of it the spirit and the soul and the body and all that. And this is the explanation of what Hannah said with regard to the birth of Samuel. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none like you, and there is no rock like our God. So look what Hannah says. Hannah says, when she finally gets pregnant with Samuel, there's no tzor like you. There's no rock like you. Now, this whole story, though, is about a painter. Someone, a human can paint but not make it come alive. God can paint or craft or whatever and make it come alive. So Hannah says, I could draw all the pictures of a baby I want, but I can't get pregnant. Only you can do that. Okay, so she gets pregnant. She uses the word tzor. And then the Talmud tells us something amazing, something that we should have realized all along if we know anything about Hebrew that we didn't figure out. What's the meaning of there is no rock, tzor, like our God? There is no artist like God. Tzor also means artist. In Hebrew, litzayer is to draw. Litzayer is to draw. Right? Tzor and sayar, rock and creator, are the same thing. God painted the world. That's why the word changed from Selah to Tzor. Now, there's one more piece to this. This is really cool. So now let's ask the question. God draws paintings. And He drew for Moses, or God creates things, however you want to say it. God creates the world. He creates everything in the world. But in this image, let's just say He made a painting for Moses. And in the painting, Moses wanted to see God. And the question is, what did he want to see? Anyone ask the question, why? Why did Moses want to see God? There was something he wanted to know about God. So God passes. There's this beautiful painting. It's of a very good-looking guy with tefillin. I mean, I imagine God would paint himself as an attractive, it's God. But that's what Moses sees. Moses sees something divine wearing, and he could see the knot of the tefillin. Okay, now, there's one more piece to this. The main purpose of Ha'azinu comes every year. Rosh Hashanah time, Yom Kippur time, every year. This year it's Shabbos Shuvah, right in between. Every year this is the time of repentance. And what Moses wants to know is, how is it possible that you can punish us for all of our sins that He's talking about and yet forgive us at the same time? How is it possible that we can have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? How is it possible that all the horrible things you told us not to do, that we did, and that you told us you're going to punish us, and you do, but yet you can forgive us as well? How is it possible that no matter what we do, you stay with Israel and you don't go to the other nations and say, okay, Israel, you've had your chance, and you messed it up, and you got kicked out of Israel twice, and you worshipped idols, and you did sinat chinam, you did all these horrible things. Now I'm going to the Hittites. How is it possible that this could be you? How can you have what we call din, judgment, and rachamim, mercy, together? How is that possible? That's what Moses wants to understand. Okay, clear so far? So who's giving him the answer? Not the Selah, not the rock that causes the trouble, not the rock in the water. The Tzur, because it's God's drawing that's now going to paint this picture for Moses, and that's why we say Tzur Yisrael. What's Tzur Yisrael? Tzur Yisrael is the one who has the power to paint the picture of forgiveness and sin. Now, by the way, what is the concept of forgiveness and sin here? The rock in the water. That's what the rock in the water means. Do you know what Moses says? I didn't bring the verse. But do you know what Moses says to God? I forget the verse. I can email it to you later if you want to see the verse, because you're not going to believe it's in there. Moses says, do you know what the people are going to do to me if I don't give them water? Vayirgamuni. No, he doesn't use that one. That's a Talmudic word. Vayiskaluni. They will stone me. Skila. If I don't give them the water, they will stone me. For Moses, rock and water meant life and death. The water saved him many times, the rocks killed him. And ultimately, it's because of the rocks that he died. So for Moses, this whole imagery of the rock and the water is Moses dying between life and death. But that's where the Jewish people are now. Last week we had in the Torah portion, Nitzavim, choose life that you shouldn't die. Right? Don't choose death. You know that the prayer we sang? Who dies by water? Who's going to die by this? Who's going to die by that? We added this year, who's going to die by pager? Who's going to die by whatever? Walkie-talkie, whatever. That's new this year. You're always supposed to put something new in your prayer. So we've come now. You ever notice we all say who's going to die? We don't walk out of Yom Kippur and we all die. That doesn't happen. We all walk out and we live. Why? Because we repented. So the whole Jewish people right now are on the precipice between life and death, or death and then life. And Moses wants to see how this is possible. How can you forgive and judge? So have you ever seen, so what's God's answer to that question? God's answer to that question is, I wear tefillin. Okay. It's not the greatest answer. Unless you think about this. Where does the knot go? There are two straps. One comes down one side, right? You know the straps? Yeah. One comes down one side, one comes down the other. One of them falls on God's left hand and one of them falls on God's right hand. The left hand represents the din that you're going to judge. But the right hand, the strong hand, is the rachamim. And so what Moses is shown by God when he sees the tefillin is, I am the one who embodies both of these things at the same time. And when Moses saw that, he said, now I understand. Now I see what you mean when you say, even though we sin, you're still going to stay with us because you gave us the din, the judgment, but you also gave us the rachamim. And the whole reason that the Torah portion starts off with Sur is to show us that when it comes to repentance, God was painting a picture, because otherwise, as we go into Yom Kippur, we really couldn't understand it. Because the Torah says, if you do all of these things, you're going to be destroyed and die. But yet every year, we walk back out. And this was God's reassurance to Moses. Think about how incredible this is. Seeing the phylactery, seeing the tefillin on the back of his head was God's assurance to Moses that God's going to make sure that the Jewish people become an eternal people, because what we have that no one else has is we've been given the gift of teshuvah. And that's the point of Ha'azinu falling in between every year, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
I have to ask, Sur is not used until Deuteronomy. Sur is only is talking. So he's the one who's the one. And whatever Moses says, it's not used until Deuteronomy. He says Selah. So now he is realizing that God is now there painting his thing.
What's confusing to me about this image, this painting, it feels like idol to me.
Yes.
You're not really supposed to have a representation.
I'm not saying that right.
That's confusing to me.
I look at it more seeing in the future.
Yeah.
So see, not a painting.
Right, but a projection.
Projection.
The other thing that's confusing to me is Selah. I always understood Selah as just like fulfillment. I didn't really ever think of it as a God. It's different.
Is it Selah with a, no, it depends on how you spell it. Selah with a summit or Selah with a sin?
Oh, it could be. It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They sound the same, but it could be different words. Yeah.
Could be. Maybe it is. Maybe that's why. That's their outfit. I'll have to look at mine. That's
Shall
an
we?
interesting idea. I'll look it up.
I hate Chabad. Bible church, you have this image of the rabbi. That to me is an image of God that they think. And
Absolutely, because I never wear it.